cool here, which is really nice. I guess I drew the short straw.
That's coordination.
Well, Tom's right. I mean, you talk about passion. Everybody up here has passion. These actually started in Siskiyou County, and I missed the very first one, and I swore I'd never miss another one, and I'm going to do my best not to. I haven't since then. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Modoc County and what's happened and how I've come to be a part of this thing. You know, when I ran for sheriff, I mean, I've been a public service or a public servant my whole life, either in the service or in law enforcement, and I've taken the oath several times. And I don't know that I ever really took a second and thought about what it really means. And I was invited up to Josephine County, and Sheriff Gilbertson is, well, I wish, you know, God bless him, because he's got a real chore. But I met Fred Kelly Grant there, and I learned about coordination, and I started learning about our oath and the 10th Amendment and the Bill of Rights. And Fred talked extensively about coordination and land use, and I'm thinking, the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm going, well, I'm from Modoc County, you know, we're the last frontier. I mean, there's no way we have a land use plan and coordination in Modoc County. There's just no way. So I'm eager to go back and dig into this thing. And guess what? Modoc County had a comprehensive land use plan in place. We had a 47-page document, and we've been doing it, we've been coordinating with the federal government for probably 15 years. And we picked our battles over the years, won some, and had not such great success with others. And after that, we were invited to Las Vegas for a national constitutional sheriff's convention. And I couldn't afford to go, but Sheriff Mack managed to raise the money somehow to actually send the sheriffs that wanted to go at the National Constitutional Sheriff's expense. So off to Vegas I went, and I was further educated as to coordination, and I learned through all of this that the problems that are not unique, really. Some of them are specific to the heritage or the culture of the counties, but overall, we're all across the country. And we had over 100 sheriffs there. I'm sure we would love to have seen a lot more than that. But the issues are common. And in Modoc, I'll talk a little bit about law enforcement issues with federal law enforcement. And when I had this event, I hosted this, our Tea Party so graciously in Modoc County helped us put this on. We had Sheriff Palmer from Grant County, Oregon come down, who's had some real issues with federal law enforcement. And I've had a few issues in Modoc County with federal law enforcement. I had a local, used to be logger, who's now trying to make a living doing whatever he can. He has a permit with the Forest Service to haul gravel from a Forest Service gravel pit. And he was arrested for hauling gravel off the Forest Service land under his permit. The law enforcement officer stopped him on a public road, asked him for his permit. He said, I'm not required to carry it. It's at home at the shop in the file. He was arrested. He was hauled, I don't know how or why, but he was hauled from a little town west of Alturas, near Canby, all the way to Tule Lake, across state line. It said they were going to take him over to John's jail and house him. And then they drove right past the cutoff going down 97. And the guy says, well, wait a minute, you just missed a turn. Yeah. Now we're taking you to Tehama now. And I guess he ended up being housed down in Tehama County. So he got a nice tour in handcuffs in the back of this rig clear across Northern California. God knows how many hours he was back there. And I got wind of this and looked into it some. And you know, I don't get to have, this should never have happened. And if one of my deputies did this, he'd have been standing tall in front of me and he would have to answer But I have no recourse with the federal law enforcement officer, other than to say, you're not welcome in Modoc County doing law enforcement. And there's lots of different reasons why. I don't get to hold this guy to the standard that I hold my own people to. You don't get to go out and, I don't. My deputies don't get to go out and stop people for no reason because they think they might be doing something wrong. We have to have a reason. I don't know what his training is. So I said, you know, I told this citizen of Modoc County, when this comes to court, let me know. I'll be happy to come down and testify for you as to what happened. Just recently, the federal government dropped its case against him, and I've heard that there was some discipline, although I don't know what it was, for the LEO, and he's still actually operating in the northwest part of Modoc County, but he certainly has no authority as far as I'm concerned. And that's just one issue. And then when I said, hey, this guy's no longer welcome here, now all of a sudden I've got, my phone's ringing, I've got an appointment with his boss from Siskiyou County, and his boss's boss from wherever he was from, and his boss's boss's boss, and his boss's 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 boss from the Bay Area, all sitting in my office wanting to know what my problem is. And, you know, you guys are my problem. In this particular case, they also, just prior to all this, they asked to expand their law enforcement authority. And the California state sheriffs, the western state sheriffs, and the individual sheriffs, as far as I know, said no. And they asked me why. And they asked me why I said no to that, and I reached in my file cabinet and I pulled out my document that they sent me explaining what they wanted to do, and then I went right to the last paragraph where it says that if they're able to do this, they will better be able to protect the natural resources, one, protect the U.S. Forest Service employees, two, and somewhere down at the end of that, protect the citizens and users on National Forest Service lands. And I said, that's in a nutshell, that's my problem. They said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, look, I've been a public servant my whole life. First thing I protect is the people. That's who I work for, and that's who I protect. And, you know, and like John says so eloquently, I like the birds and the frogs and everything else too. But quite frankly, who knows more about protecting those resources than the people that have been making a living utilizing them for 4 or 5 generations? It's a no-brainer. Again, common sense is out the window. And then I said, and the bottom line is, it's not Forest Service land. It's public land. And until you get that right, I don't want to see you back there again. We don't have as much of an issue with the travel management because, like I said, we're fortunate we have a comprehensive land use committee, and we have coordination, and we have addressed it. And we we were lucky for a long time that we had a very good Forest Service supervisor, and he agreed, and they haven't closed any roads. So, you know, that's a wonderful thing. But the bottom line on that whole deal is, I mean, you ask them and they can't tell you why. You know, what's your reasoning for wanting to close these roads? They won't tell you. But they probably don't have one. They just want to do it. And so coordination comes back in again because, you know, it's a public safety issue. If they start putting gates up on roads and we have fires or we need to get there, we can't. And what about our economy again? You know, in Modoc County, I mean, we're really poor. I mean, we're really poor. I could teach Sheriff Gilbertson Granted, I don't have the population he does, but I do have 4,200 square miles, the 10th largest county geographically. By the way, I have out of 58 counties, my budget is 57th. So, and why is that? You know, county government is scratching their heads going, well, you know, we don't have logging. Now they want to close our roads, and we do, believe it or not, we get people who like to come up to Modoc County and camp and recreate and use those roads. So that's important. You don't get to just close them without mitigating that with us. So we need to educate. This whole thing really is about education. We need to educate the people to say, look, we need to hold the federal government's feet to the fire, because like you've already been told, there are no less than 27 some odd U.S. codes, federal codes of regulation that require the federal government to coordinate. So we need to hold our feet to the fire and say, by God, you're going to do it. You know, we may not win every battle, but it affects our economy. Our board's going, where do we get money? Where's it going to come from? Well, you know, I tell this story, and it's sad, but it's true. Years ago, when I was raising my kids, used to be able to get a deer tag in Modoc County. We got some pretty good mule deer hunting up there. And my wife would say, I remember one time in particular, hey, can you stop and pick up a loaf of bread on the way home today? Sure, no problem, honey. And I come home without it, and of course I'm in the doghouse. I just called you and told you to bring it. I know, but honey, it's deer season. I forgot. You can't buy a loaf of bread in Modoc County during deer season. Well, nowadays you can't tell when deer season is. So how has that affected our economy? You bet it has. Was there any mitigation? No, none. And there needs to be. I want to read a couple things out of our county comprehensive land use management plan here. The Board of Supervisors, and I don't know who had the foresight in Modoc County years ago, because this was really unheard of, this coordination thing back then. But one of the critical duties of the board is to supervise and protect the tax base of the county, and that's per Government Code Section 23004. The board in Modoc County is well aware that the historical, overriding, and predominant goal of the county's citizens, and therefore its government, has been the continuation of a lifestyle which assures quiet enjoyment of private property rights and property interests, and assures the highest degree of protection to these rights. Property rights and interests are important to the independent people who live and work in this rugged, mostly remote county, which has an enormous land mass, larger than some states in the Union, but a population as small as some villages. People who live in this county are relying upon the land and its productive use. Private ownership and the incentive provided by private ownership is the driving force which supports the livelihood of all Modoc County citizens. The board is also well aware that at this time, federal and state managed lands make up over 3/4 of the land mass in Modoc County, and that there are continuing efforts to increase that amount. Moreover, Modoc County's economy is dependent on business activities on federal and state managed lands, and these activities are inseparably tied to the remaining portion of private land in Modoc County. To a substantial degree, the county and its people are at the mercy of state and federal planning decisions, often to the detriment of local communities and citizens, and the board is of the opinion that such circumstances are contrary to the basic principles of freedom, liberty, and sound resource management. So the custom, culture, and economic base of Modoc County historically is a story retold in many western counties. Located at the convergence of the Lass and Applegate Trail, the settlement of the county is the history of livestock, farming, logging, mining, wildlife, and railroad industries led by hardy individuals willing to work and develop the resources to bring forth a community. The settlement of the county is based on the beneficial use of land at a time in history which precedes the misguided regulatory efforts which today threaten the same custom and culture. The people of Modoc County have historically and traditionally earned their livelihood from activities reliant upon natural resources. So, I mean, this is 1995. and when I say this is about education, that's what I mean. All counties need to get on board and get this together, and we need to educate them. Because, like I said, there's laws in place that say they have to do it, and they haven't been. And that's part of the problem why we are, in fact, that's the biggest part of the problem why we are the way we are. I want to talk a little bit about Modoc's spotted owl. No, it's actually a sage grouse. You know, Modoc County exports, I think we're second in the state as far as feeder calves. And farming is huge, but ranching is really right now our livelihood. And just like they're going after water and they're going after some kind of fingerling fish, in Modoc they're cutting off or stopping or trying to stop permittees from grazing public lands because of the sage grouse. And the thing is about all of this is we need to get, and I was talking to somebody today about this, we're like stuck to the dam with our fingers and our toes trying to plug the leaks. And just when we get one shut off, another one comes out, and we need to go on the offensive. We can't be on the defensive anymore. That goes for no matter what it is. In Modoc, it's a sage grouse. You know, one rancher lost his permit 5 years ago. And it costs him probably $50,000, $60,000 a year that he doesn't have. And I asked him, so how's the sage grouse habitat since you haven't been on the permit? It's worse. So, I mean, come on. What's the real reason here?
Starving you out.
Yeah, it's common sense. This is just a ruse. It's a ruse. Just like John said, sage grouse, oh, I got a problem here, I'm going to fly to another spot. I'm going to go to another tree, or there's another reason. Predators, they won't even address it. Ravens. We got more juniper trees, they're like weeds. Ravens sit in those, they take the leks. And then, this is funny, I noticed in the paper that there was a meeting, and I don't know how or why they announced it in the paper, but on the sage grouse between the Forest Service and BLM. So I went, uninvited. And it's a room about this size, and it's lined with tables and visual aids and people from BLM and people from the Forest Service, and a few ranchers. And I'm going, my God, you know, I mean, it's great, it's beautiful. I'd like to have the money it costs just to put this thing on tonight. I could do a lot with that. I might even be able to save a position or add a deputy. Who knows? And it's really frustrating because I don't think that, you know, I think the Forest Service, you know, they get a lot of pressure from Western Watersheds and these other groups who have the money and the people and the backing. And they're basing their decisions, or they're dragging things out. Wild horses in Modoc County, you know, they're not indigenous to our county. They're really not. The wild horses we have in Modoc County are horses that have been lost or turned out over the years from ranchers, and that's another issue that's huge. We've got thousands of them, believe it or not. And our poor ranchers who have grazing permits, now, gee, that's to keep the grass down, number one, to fuel, and also to make the cows fat so they can sell them. Well, guess what? The horses are eating it all. There's no grass on the permit for the cows to eat. The only place on the permit where there's grass is a pen where the rancher had to haul hay to keep it in there to feed them. Well, how does that work? So we need to thin them out. Okay, we use a coordination. Here's an example of coordination that's not working so great. They're dragging their feet. We have to do a NEPA study. We have to do this study. We have to do that study. And federal government, well, Chief, I'm sorry, we don't have the money to do that right now. Are you kidding me? In the meantime, what happens to our economy and what happens to those ranchers? So they need to get off the ball and handle that kind of stuff. And I don't know You know, like I said, you're not going to win every battle, but you have to take them on. John mentioned a little bit about, you know, getting some publicity. I think we're doing something right if we do, if it comes from the right people. You know, you can't make everybody happy, and people need to know. I don't think there's anything fanatical about being passionate. And I see passion in this room, I see passion up here, and I'm really proud to be a part of that. And I certainly, people can call it whatever they want, but it's important. It's public to us. It's important to us as public servants. We talk about the Constitution, we talk about sheriffs, and you know, people don't realize that sheriffs, and when you think about law enforcement in general across this nation, whether they be city or federal or state or county, which faction is actually responsible to and elected by the people? Sheriffs. That's it. No other entity responsible. And so maybe we're more apt to say, geez, you know, and not forget that. Because we do work for you guys, and the rest of them need to be reminded of that. Or maybe they should be elected as well, so they're accountable to you folks. I'm going to cut this off here. I've talked longer than I usually talk. Before I go, I want to ask the veterans in the room to stand up. You know, God bless you all. Thank you for your service. As we travel around doing these and the tea parties, and everyone in the room's a patriot, it's amazing how many veterans there are, and you know, God bless those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice that are rolling over in their graves right now as we fight this battle, and we owe it to them to continue to fight it. I'm going to make just one little quote, the same one I made last time to end this. And this is something that was written 200 years ago, over 200 years ago. Could have been written this morning or tomorrow. And we talk about our founding fathers and their foresight. A government big enough to supply everything you need is big enough to take everything you have. The course of history shows that as a government grows, liberty decreases. Fight the fight, keep fighting the fight. Thank you all for coming.